welcome to Time for Health. I'm your host, Rachel Fall, and we're very glad you're with us today. We are going to learn about the American Red Cross. I have another Rachel here with me. I don't think I've ever had a Rachel here.
This will be easy then.
It will be easy,
yeah.
so thank you. Rachel Hepner from the American Red Cross out of Toledo.
Correct.
All right, so tell me about the Red Cross. I picture MASH.
You picture MASH. Okay,
Like
well, fair enough. And that's actually kind of the first question I ask most of the groups that I talk to is when you think of the Red Cross, what do you think of? And most people either affiliate it with blood or with something, years ago, during the wartime, very much like MASH. And the interesting thing about the American Red Cross is it was founded by, we call her the angel on the battlefield. Her name is Clara Barton, and she founded the American Red Cross in 1881. And her big thing, and that's during the Civil War, was to be a neutral nursing individual amongst both sides of the fence. And back then that was something that was really unheard of. And we got our first congressional mandate in the early 1900s. And the one thing that's really interesting about the American Red Cross is we are neutral. We are a neutral organization, and we alleviate human suffering. That's what we do. But we're not congressionally funded. So even though we're congressionally mandated to do what we do, we don't receive any funding, which gives us the autonomy to kind of move around our mission as much as we want to.
Gotcha. Okay. So you've been around a lot longer than I thought.
Yes, we've been around. Well, here, in Northwest Ohio is about 102 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, good deal. So there are many parts to the American Red Cross. The one that maybe a lot of people think of, the one that I think of the most is donating blood.
Right.
Talk a little bit about that.
Sure. So historically, we have been the primary collector of blood, and over the years, there are other agencies that can now do the same thing that we do.
Okay.
But primarily here in North America, we're responsible for over 40% of the nation's blood supply.
Okay.
So we still are the majority when you spread that out along all of the other companies that can collect.
Okay.
So it really is something that we take very seriously. Blood cannot be manufactured, and we always have a need. So we want to make sure that there's enough blood on the shelves. So hospitals like Magruder here has enough on the shelves to be able to service their, to their patients.
Okay. So what is the whole process?
So walk you through an actual donation. So we certainly want to make sure that whoever shows up to donate is, in good health that day, at least 110 pounds. We will go through a health screening process, go through, have you traveled lately? Have you visited certain countries? Have you had a tattoo in the last year? There's a lot of things that we do ahead of time to make sure, A, that blood is going to be appropriate for the needs that we have, and B, that they actually qualify to give that day. So there is a health screening that goes through it. And really it's just kind of a function of what type of blood do you want to donate today. Whole blood is really what most people do. So throughout the human body, we have anywhere between 10 and 12 pints of blood available at any moment.
Okay.
And giving an actual blood donation is about a pint. So you're not gonna, not make it after you
don't
donate
have to
blood.
Go
you
home
have plenty
or anything after that.
Right. You have plenty, to replenish yourself with. And the overall process really takes about an hour from the time that you check in to going through the health history to the actual donation. The donation itself can take, anywhere from 15 to 20 minutes. And then after that, if you're doing a whole blood donation, we really want you to kind of relax for a little bit. The best part, have some cookies, have some juice. So that's really kind of the whole blood. And really, your O positive is the most universal blood. O negative is also one that can be the most transfused.
Okay.
If you donate what we call a power red, that's where they pull out the tiny red blood cells, a little bit of plasma, and then it goes through a machine. It takes a little bit longer. Smaller needle. A lot of people like to hear that.
Okay.
But they put a lot of that right back into your body again.
Okay.
So that is something that takes a little bit more time, but there really isn't a recovery afterwards.
Okay.
You can donate Power Reds every 112 days.
Okay.
Normal, a whole pint of blood every 56 days. Now, if you do platelets, that is something that, again, takes a little bit longer. You can do every 7 days, where they hook you up to an apheresis machine, and they pull out the platelets, which for people who are in cancer treatments, they need that in order for them to be able to clot their blood to
Okay.
be able to clot. So
Okay.
that's something you can do every 7 days. So there are different, it's funny when I talk to donors, like, well, I've been a platelet donor for this, and they really kind of find that thing that, not really that they're good at, but they really know that there's a need for, and they're really, really loyal donors. So as scary as it might seem to everybody who's watching today, it really isn't, and think you can save up to 3 lives. And the reality is because you can do your whole bloods, you can do your plasma and your platelets.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So can you do all of those at a blood drive, all 3 of those?
Not necessarily. So something like the Power Reds, it have to be hooked up to a machine, so those are not anything that we typically transport. And the same with the apheresis, the platelets.
Okay.
Those have to be done in an actual fixed site that has the machine available.
Okay, so you can't necessarily do it all. So sometimes, how does a person sign up if they're interested?
Yeah, so I would go, redcross.org
Okay.
is a great tool
Okay.
for really anything that we do as an
Yeah.
organization. And you click on the blood, and one of the nice things is you can usually find a drive near you pretty quickly.
Right.
And if you don't, then there are fixed sites within, Northwest Ohio is over on Executive Parkway in Toledo.
Okay.
You might be able to find something in Erie County, but signing up for a blood drive right there. You can also download one of our apps. It's called the Rapid Pass. So the Rapid Pass will allow you to check in the morning of your donation. So you can bypass all the health history and check in right there. And then it'll also tell you where your blood was delivered and, if it saved a life, which is a really nice thing for our donors, because then it kind of comes full circle. Not that if you don't have the Rapid Pass, you get the same thing.
Right.
It would come to your email, but that just it speeds up the process a little bit.
Gotcha. So, oh my gosh, that's a lot of information.
It is a lot of information. I could just keep talking, but it's
So online, your website, redcross.org,
Yep.
has all kinds of stuff on there about
It does.
blood and other things we're going to
It
talk
does.
about as well.
Correct.
But I know we have blood drives just about every 56 to 60 days at the hospital. Sometimes we have 2 a month. They can call me to set up. And they have, like you said, there are blood drives all over the place. I know people have called and say, I signed up, I can't give, and you can go on the website, put your zip code in, and it'll find
something else
for you to do.
Correct. And we've been in a blood shortage for a number of years now, and that really doesn't have, we haven't quite pinpointed exactly what it is, but my opinion, this is just my opinion, I know historically, and I'll use my parents as an example, the baby boomer era, that was just something that was kind of ingrained in them. Donating blood is something they saw their parents do, and that's something they've always just done. And now that the baby boomer generation is now retired and they're off doing other things, travel plays a big part of it, because there are travel restrictions.
Right.
So people like my parents that are retired and are traveling all over the country and all over the world, a lot of times that's going to automatically ding them from donating. So there are certain things, I think, that my generation tends to be a little bit busier, or we think that we're busier, and we don't. It's not something that's ingrained in us. And also, I think there's a general fear. People have a fear of needles and of the whole process. But the hurricane seasons over the past 3 years have not done us any favors. The cold and flu season any year does not do us any favors. The government shutdown this year hurt us quite a bit as well from all of our government drives. So it just seems like we've never really been able to catch up over the past couple of years because of certain factors. The holidays are always a tough time for people to donate. The summer is tough because our high school drives aren't happening, our university drives aren't happening, and people travel for summer vacation too. So we really want to encourage somebody, if they've never donated before, just to try it, and I certainly can attest that it does not hurt.
Right.
Take a book, use that time to, meditate, to read. I don't know what you want to do.
If you have kids,
but
just sit in the quiet.
Sit in the quiet, throw on some headphones. But you are doing something that could ultimately save somebody's life.
Save some lives. Yeah, I do remember reading that each pint can save up to 3 lives.
That's correct.
You mentioned that there are travel and different things. And those things change all the time. Sometimes when I call people to donate at the hospital or wherever, oh, I've gotten a tattoo, or oh, I traveled out of the country. But all that changes, and I'm not an expert on it. You probably are, but is there a place somebody can go or a phone
Right.
number where they can call
Yeah,
to
so
see?
the website's great. So if you clicked on blood, there's frequently asked questions. I forget exactly what the links are, but what is it, how do I qualify to donate? So I would go out there, and it does make a list, but a lot of that does come up in the health history as well. So
Okay.
it will come up on the front end. We do run all of the blood through so many different types of screenings, which is also a really big plus. About once or twice a year, I'll get a phone call from somebody that said, I am so glad that I donated blood because I didn't know that I had X underlying medical condition that's now being addressed. So it is,
Wow.
it's kind of another nice thing that we're able to offer our donors, that we might be able to detect something that otherwise they didn't know they had.
Right. And so I've had people say, well, I got a tattoo. Well, getting a tattoo doesn't necessarily preclude you. So
there's some questions
I
that
always
will go
just
along
say,
with that.
There's if you're willing to do this, there is such a need that just try. You
try
might
it.
get deferred for something,
Sure.
but just try.
Right. Yeah.
And the hemoglobin, like
Yeah.
that, they test that to make
Detects the
sure that you're.
iron. Yep,
okay.
and that's always been my hiccup is I always have such a low iron content, which is very common in women,
Right.
and so, but again, it's just a finger prick, and they'll say, I'm sorry, do you want me to try the other finger? No, thanks, one prick's enough, and I'll try again, some other time.
Next
But,
time.
eating iron-rich foods ahead of time, lots of green leafy vegetables and red meat and, fish.
Raisins.
A box of raisins did it for me last time, and I was fine. But drinking enough fluids and getting a good night rest will give you the best possible situation to donate that day.
I have heard people say drinking, not overly drinking, but having some water ahead
Yes.
of time kind of fluffs up your. I don't know if
About
it really-
16 ounces is going to allow that donation process, at least
kind of
for the
flow.
purpose of finding the appropriate
Okay.
vein is good.
So there's lots of things that maybe people tell themselves about why they don't want my blood. I've heard that too, but that
Yeah.
may not necessarily be true, and let you guys figure that out
Yes.
if you need to be deferred for some
that's
reason.
correct.
But
That's
there is a need because of increased need of donation and different times of the year, decreased opportunities for
And,
drives.
I think I've heard about 80,000 donors over the past 4 or 5 years, and so we need to get those back.
Yes,
Because the need for blood, because it can't be manufactured, will always be there.
will always be there.
Yep.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
All right, we are going to take a break, and we will be right back. And we're back. We're talking with the other Rachel.
That's right.
About the American Red Cross and all the many, many things that you do. So we talked a lot about blood donation in the beginning, and just talking about the massive need. 80,000 donors you've lost over the last
Few years.
Few years. Okay, so we need people to donate. And again, we're always kind of hearing for one reason or another, natural disasters, all different kinds of things, that there's a shortage. So how much do you need to have? How much do you send out? All that kind of
Sure.
stuff.
So somebody needs blood just about every 2 seconds. I mean, that's nationwide.
Right.
But here in the Western Lake Erie blood region, which encompasses about 11 counties, we need to collect 300 units per day in order to satisfy the 20 hospitals within our region. Okay. So that amounts to about 48,000 pints of blood every single year. And depending on what type of blood you donate, for a single donor not being able to donate, but every 56 days, I mean, we have to have really good, solid donors that are either keep coming back or recruiting new blood donors all the time.
Right. And I do know at least at the blood drives at the hospital, that we do have some solid donors who
bet.
every single time donate.
Yep.
What kinds of things, like how can we help find donors? Just ask friends?
Certainly. I mean, really just promote the drives that you might see, in your area, at the hospital, if the high school does them.
Right.
Just encouraging people just to give it a try. The one thing that I always say is if you're afraid, obviously try it, but you never want to be in the position, nor do you want a physician who might be attending to you or to somebody else that you love to be in a situation where you might need blood and it's not there.
Right.
So I think it's one of those ways that you can give the gift of life for about 45 minutes to an hour of your time.
Right. It's, yeah.
It's important. It's so important,
It
and
is
I
really
think that
important.
we forget that.
It is important. I will say I had to have a transfusion a couple of years ago,
See?
twice.
Right.
And I was like, well, I'm sure glad we have blood drives here.
That's right.
Just every now and then it drives it right home. American Red Cross does many, many other things besides donating blood. I know at the hospital and the conference center, they often have the first aid, CPR. Sure. Can you talk about those? Because those have changed. They used to be 3 separate things, several hours long.
Right, several hours long. So, so we still offer so many different training courses, whether it be, we still do the babysitting classes. In some areas, we still do the lifeguarding classes, but the CPR, first aid, whether it be adult and pediatric, and then AEDs.
Right.
That is a training that really everybody should take. And it's one of those trainings that you get a 2-year certification. So we see a lot of individuals that are coming in or going into nursing school or going into EMT training that need to have these as a prerequisite. So it's no longer, a 6-hour-long class. That's an option, but there's an online portion, an actual online class portion that you can take. And then in order to get your 2-year cert, it's like 90 minutes then in the classroom with the hands-on, with the mannequin, that will allow you to get that 2-year certification. So that's one thing.
So they can do the online part
ahead of time.
Whenever
they
it works
have to
for
do it ahead of
them.
time, and then they sign up for an in-person class for 90 minutes. And something else that we're doing more and more now is the citizen CPR, or the compression only.
Oh, okay.
So, albeit a lot of people are afraid to, when they get on a situation, to go mouth to mouth on a perfect stranger. But the reality is that keeping the compressions going for as long as you possibly can before EMS or fire rescue gets there is just as important, and it can be between life and death versus doing the full-on mouth-to-mouth CPR.
Okay.
So the compression only, or the citizen CPR classes, really are only about 20 to 30 minutes long. We have several. I can teach it. So it's really just teaching people the proper technique, and really just kind of practicing it, making sure that your hands are interlocked correctly. You're over the patient. You're asking somebody to call for help. You're making sure the scene is safe for you to actually administer the compressions, and just kind of getting that cadence down. So I'm telling you, if you do that, it's better than doing nothing.
Right. So that's something new, and it changed. Like the AED, wasn't really an issue.
So
People didn't have them.
Really, the schools have them. Office buildings have them. And the nice thing about the
everybody
AED equipment is it's so advanced now that it actually speaks to you when you pull it
does.
out. It tells you what to do, where to put the pads. So but it's nice to feel confident to know that you have those courses under your belt.
And you mentioned you do babysitting classes and
Still do babysitting classes.
lifeguarding classes?
Lifeguarding classes are kind of sporadic throughout the country.
Okay.
So it really is just a function of where are the pools and where are the instructors to teach those classes.
Okay. And all of that I bet we could find on your website.
You certainly can. Yes.
Phone number also? It's just as easy as your
Red
website.
Cross. Yep.
Okay, 1-800-RED CROSS.
Correct.
So they can call or look online for any of these classes.
That might be in their area, correct.
Okay. Any other trainings or classes or anything like that?
So disaster services and disaster response is really kind of the biggest thing that people see us do, especially during hurricane season. We're always looking for volunteers to help us to deploy, to help us here locally respond to a home fire. In Northwest Ohio, we respond to a home fire every 19 hours, which, in the wintertime, that's probably a little bit conservative. But the nice thing is when you're a registered Red Cross volunteer and you go through the training, those CPR classes and any other additional training classes are free. So that's just a nice offering that we give to our volunteers, understanding that they're giving up their personal time to give their time to somebody else. But we're always in need of volunteers in so many different ways, whether it's through our biomed program, through our disaster services program, our service to the armed forces program, as well as really anything that we need around the office too. So we're 94% volunteer driven nationally as an organization. So most of the things that we do are done by volunteers.
And your office here in Port Clinton is?
It's over at the Sutton Center.
Okay.
Yep, so the same building as the United Way and all the other TNT services, WSOS, and that amazing bistro.
Right.
So.
And so volunteers run that as well, so they answer
do.
the phone and can kind of direct people.
They can, but 1-800-RED CROSS is really a good,
The primary.
and if you're web savvy, just hop online.
Right.
There's a lot of information that you can download there.
Okay. So donating blood, all the training, CPR,
Yep.
first aid, all those kinds of things, disaster preparedness. Any other areas, or is there something like, I just wish people knew this about the American Red
Well,
Cross?
sometimes I just wish people knew that that we really do rely on the generosity of our donors to execute our mission, because we are congressionally mandated to show up to hurricanes. We're not federally funded. So, you know, if you can't give the gift of blood, then you know, perhaps consider a financial contribution that will help us continue our mission to aid not only our programs and services here in Northwest Ohio, but when we do deploy to some of those episodic disasters. I was fortunate enough to spend 2 weeks at Hurricane Florence in September, you know, having the opportunity to look at somebody who's been affected, completely devastated by a disaster,
Right.
you know, getting to yes and getting the ability to tell them, yes, I can help you with that, is really, truly very rewarding. And we wouldn't be able to do that without the generosity of our donors,
Right.
corporate donors, individual donors.
And you also help do that locally. You have volunteers that help kind of
Yep.
do those things locally, like you said, with fires
Home
or
fires, yep.
tornadoes or different things like that. What kinds of things do they do?
So just for instance, just for a house fire, you know, we get a call from a dispatch, and we verify the location of the fire, and we send volunteers to go, and we start, it's a response phase at that point. We want to make sure that everybody in the household has been accounted for. Usually the fire department does that when they get there, but making sure that we have an accurate list of everybody who was affected that lived in that structure.
Okay.
And then from there, we give them something, make sure that they have a place to stay that night, they have warm clothes, they have, you know, food in their belly, and then we start the recovery process, and that's where our caseworkers take over. So it's not just about the response, but, you know, after we respond, what next? You know, oh, I lost my glasses. We lost, God forbid, we lost a pet, or I now don't have, you know, my books for school. All of those things, and we work with prescriptions. You know, things that you don't really think
Yeah.
about. And it's not just about getting them through the physical aspects of the recovery, getting them back to as close as where they were, but there's a lot of mental health that goes along with that as well. You know, even if it's, you know, the little old lady down the street whose toaster may have smoked and burnt a cabinet in her kitchen, that might not have been disastrous, but that will mentally affect her. So making sure that our social workers and our mental health individuals sit down with the family and talk it through, you know, and talk about how they're feeling and
Right.
how we actually go forward. So it's whether it's a small disaster like a single family home fire, or if it's a giant hurricane, we follow those families through the entire process. You know,
Okay.
I use this as an example. So Hurricane Harvey devastated Texas. Okay, it just spun over Texas for days. You know, we were there through the recovery process, and that was in August. We were there through Christmas, helping those individuals that needed it really kind of get back to as close as where they were prior to that
Right.
disaster.
Do you help them like call insurance companies and all that? Whatever
can,
they
yes,
need.
yeah, we can, at that moment, you really don't know what you need until somebody is there who has been through it with other clients to say, this is what you need to do.
Gotcha.
Let us walk you through this process.
Yeah, because you're probably in shock.
You are in shock.
You're just, I wouldn't know what
Right.
to do first or
Right,
next
and
or anything.
your insurance company, it's going to take a while for them to,
Sure.
you know, be able to help you recover, you know, give you a check, start that process. So making sure that, again, you have a safe place to stay, you know, food in your belly and clothes on your back are just the little things that we do. It's just care and comfort
Right.
for the first stage of that recovery process.
cool.
Yeah.
So if somebody wants to get involved, there's lots of things. Donating blood.
Yep.
Cash donation is always
Cash is king,
lovely,
yep.
and you can do that on the website, I'm
You can.
sure,
Yep.
somewhere.
Or you can call your local chapters.
Okay. Volunteering anywhere from in an office to going
To
down
being out
to
in the
help
field.
with a hurricane.
We have
recovery.
individuals that drive blood from our warehouse
Oh, sure.
to the hospitals.
Okay.
So there's always a need for that. But really, if you've got kind of an affinity for service to the armed forces, we have several programs that help support.
Talk a little bit about that. Like
Yeah.
if somebody's deployed and they need to get in touch with
Yes,
somebody.
so that
okay.
is a something else that people don't understand is that if you are serving in the armed forces and there's an emergency message, if it comes from the Red Cross, everything stops.
Ah.
So we are the only agency that can deliver those emergency messages and
Okay.
start the facilitation of making sure, if it's appropriate, to have that loved one come back and So yeah,
Wow.
it's pretty cool.
That is that's something I had kind of vaguely remember hearing about, but okay. All kinds of things
All
that
good
somebody
things.
can
Lots
do
of
to
warm
help.
and fuzzies for sure.
And what did you, relieve human suffering? That's your
Alleviate
human
human suffering.
Awesome. It's a pretty cool mission.
It's very cool.
All right. We are going to take another break and we'll be right back. And we're back. I want to thank Rachel for being our guest today. I knew a little bit about the American Red Cross, but there is a lot to it, a lot of ways that they help and a lot of ways that they need your help and my help and everybody's help. So check out their website, redcross.org, or you can call 1-800-RED-CROSS. And again, everything from volunteering, financial donations, donating blood, there's so many ways that you can help out. I will say, I'm making a shameless plug for the next 2 blood drives at Magruder are May 17th and May 31st. They're both Fridays, 10:30 to 4:30. And they just have so much to offer. So thanks again for being here. And if you ever have a suggestion for an episode, let me know. And I'm just glad you joined us. And until we meet again, I encourage you to make time for health.